Your Excellency, the speeches that we've heard so far this morning. And let me take you through. I'll roughly talk for 20 minutes, and then hopefully we can do questions. A lot of the work that you've seen here, all data-driven, comes from not just this news group here in the Philippines, but also from the international, the Technology and Democracy Initiative at Columbia University. Okay, let me turn this on. How are we? Yes. Does it work? Actually, this doesn't work. It'd be easier. Yeah? Is it on or? Yes, back. All right. So Rappler is a news organization that's roughly about 100 people. The data that you will see today was gathered. We just won all of our cases, 10 cases against Rappler, 11 cases against me during the time of the Duterte administration. Yes, please. Thank you. We survived. We survived, right? So you can survive. And I think, Mr. Ambassador, you will see the both how quickly a meme goes from social media to state policy to kinetic action. And that we've seen work in Greenland as well. It really isn't working. You know what? I can actually, here, I'm short enough, you can see me. I'll click it through here. Is that all right? So this way you're not, no. So a lot of this, you'll see, let me quickly go through this. The book was published in 2022. The question I asked Filipinos then is, what will you sacrifice for the truth? Because essentially what happened was we couldn't tell the difference between fact and fiction, right? When you say a lie 1,000,000 times, it becomes a fact. It's been translated to more than 25 different languages. Each country has its own spin, right? How to Stand Up to a Dictator in French became Resist the Dictators. In Japanese, it's a little bit more passive. And then this is Korean, right before what happened in Korea last year. And in Mandarin, I think our Taiwanese friends are here. This one was fascinating to me. In April, this is Georgia. Georgia has now had more than 530 days of daily protests, right? This has been going on. And the journalist who was jailed in Georgia essentially was boxed, could not speak in her own defense. There's a report that comes out with that. And she held up. She let the book stand up for it. Okay, let me see if it'll work. Okay, great. Now you can see me, medyo hindi ako matangkad eh. So, sorry, I said I'm not that tall. Let's click it through. You can time me one more time. It's not really. The other option is to bring it up here if that will make. You won't. It's okay. This is Mongolian between China and Russia. Still not. I think the only other. 3 years after it was published, Americans went crazy and started buying it, made it a #3 New York Times bestseller list, right? So actually a little bit shocking to me that would happen, but part of it is because what happened to us in the Philippines in 2016 went everywhere else around the world. Obviously, Europe is going through this. Here's what's at the core of what you heard this morning, which is the artificial intelligence that's been there for over 70 years. And there are two ways that's come in. Artificial intelligence came in with social media, where machine learning actually came in. If you're on Facebook, there are more than 2,500 huge data sets of you that has been pulled together to create a profile, to create a model of you that knows you better than yourself. Replace the word model with clone, right? So you've been digitally cloned, and then artificial intelligence came in and took all of our clones, and that massive database was used for micro-targeting. I'm going to go from micro to macro so you know what happens to you then is used later on, right? So micro-targeting allows targeting each of us, the cellular level of a democracy, with specific messages. And that can come from a company or a country. The second, generative AI, which was rolled out the same week as How to Stand Up to a Dictator, generative AI is now using probabilistic, taking all the data possible and probabilistic tech backend that will give you, depending on your training data, it then creates the probability, gives you the probability, right? Neither of these two technologies are actually anchored in facts. They're anchored in different things. But the problem with generative AI, of course, is that the error rate remains high. The commercial models will have error rates as low. The lowest would be around 16%, right? The chatbot you see on Rappler is about 1.63% because we own our own data and we anchor it with a graph rag. But if you're using the commercial models, your error rate is 16%. What are those commercial models used for? War, right? They're also used for war. So I co-chair the UN's International Independent Scientific Panel on AI with Joshua Bengio from Canada. And we're about to come out with our first report in July this year. Anyway, why is that? Oh, yay. Okay, up on top. Man, they're fast. Here are the harms that we've had to deal with, right? The harms globally. And you can see what they are. One more time. Yes. Okay. And I can take a clicker from here. You want me to? All right. So the harms globally. Great. All right. Tangkad uli. Surveillance and digital colonialism, right? Because if you are Black, brown, or in the global South, which is where we are, the data, the way the algorithms, the design of the platforms actually marginalizes us even more. So, it was Christopher Wiley, the Cambridge Analytica whistleblower, who said colonialism didn't die, it only moved online. Biased and oppressive AI systems, the exploitation of data workers. In 2016, the first people who were cleaning up the data for a company like Facebook were where? They were in the Manila and they were in Warsaw, right? Those were the main ones. The exploitation of data workers, environmental damage. I think countries are grappling with this because the data centers that are needed to make this work. By the way, on the data workers, we in the global South are the ones cleaning up the data for the global North. Finally, the last one, which you've seen most of the work of Rappler, is the destruction of agency. Did you actually choose to vote for who you voted for, or were you nudged? I want to, my second book, From Bin Laden to Facebook, I wrote at Rohan Gunaratna's Institute. And you'll see later on that the same process of radicalization that targeted young men who became suicide bombers, for example, are now the same tactics that have been deployed to society through social media, through the tech that we're using. It's really not working. All right, well, let me show you. I know this very well. This is the network that attacked Rappler, that attacked journalists, that also attacked opposition politicians. It was so organized that it was broken down by demographic, right? These were some of the attacks, and I'm going to go through this relatively quickly so you can see what it looks like when you're targeted. This was from 2017, this data. These are memes that were pushed about me. I have, I'm not corrupt. I've been a reporter. This is my 40th year as a journalist, but I do have dry skin, right? So this is what happened. Every time we won an award, every time we did an investigative report, I was attacked. And you can see my skin is better than this. At a certain point, I just had to laugh. Because after that came the next phase, which is dehumanization. And you have things like this. I'm sorry, don't eat or drink. The nickname they created for me was scrotum face, right? And it took years for the platforms to take this down from the site. But when it gets to dehumanization, like the experience of Daphne Caruana Galizia in Malta, dehumanization leads directly to violence. So what we needed to do was, in the first year of the Duterte administration, we increased our security 6 times. They're very creative. The platforms actually don't take it down. And you can see, this is the Frontline documentary, 1,000 Cuts, which was at Sundance. And this is a Facebook page. Look how creative they are. It's still there, right? See, I gotta laugh about it. It took me a while to be able to show this to you publicly, but it was all over social media. The same way, so what happens? When you say a lie a million times, it becomes a fact, right? That is information operations. I'm not alone. In 2022, UNESCO came out with the report, Global Trends in Online Violence Against Women Journalists. This one, 73% of journalists had experienced online abuse, 25% received threats of physical violence, and of that 25%, 20% had been attacked or abused in the physical world. We redid this study and last December launched a new report in Brussels that showed you that number, 20%, increased in the last 4.5 years to 42%. Right? So 42% of the women who had been attacked online experienced physical violence. This is what happens now with generative AI. A Russian scam network had a deep fake. So if you see me, you think you're seeing me selling you crypto, that's not me, right? I was getting calls from CEOs saying, where can I buy that crypto? I said, don't buy it because it's a scam. But we did track the network that was pushing this out on Bing and on Facebook, and we got it taken down, but there's a lot more. So this was you'll see we came out with it on March 3, 2024. There have been many Filipino people you would have followed, people you would have trusted, who were telling Filipinos with diabetes to throw away their insulin. Don't believe that. Again, if you see a lot of these things, that's my most recent one. So here's where we go to what the story is about. The reason why I wanted to tell you that was because when we were attacked when we had 3 shutdown orders in Rappler, right? And when we were first attacked, we dropped 49% of our advertising revenue within the first 4 months. That was January 2018. So what we did, and now I can tell you, was we created a separate company. We took out our data and tech arms from Rappler and created Nerve. And with Nerve, we were then able to tell you what was happening to you in the public information ecosystem, right? So the 3 sentences I've said over and over since 2016, without facts, you can't have truth. Without truth, you can't have trust. Without these 3, we don't have a shared reality. You can't begin to solve any problem because you can't agree on what problem you're going to solve. We can't begin to solve climate change. We can't begin to solve any national issue, right? The biggest problem for leaders today is how will they communicate with their people? I actually feel really sorry for governments. It's hard, very hard when the public information ecosystem, when your mediator is either Silicon Valley or TikTok, right? China. So this is directly connected to geopolitical power play. So I tell you about Nerve because in the Philippines, we've since figured out when 90 hate messages per hour are coming your way, you don't have to ask Facebook for the data. I got the data. So it's both a blessing and a curse to get attacked. But that's how we were able to find out what was happening in the public information ecosystem. Okay, now I'm going to tell you 2 things of what happens during information operations. That's where we're headed. Counterterrorism folks understand this, right? How do you get radicalized? This is a slide I have shown Protect from many, many years back. But when I did this, Rohan knows this slide. I was talking about terrorism in the real world. This is the process of radicalization. And then I want you to see here, this is the way an extremist or a terrorist is born, right? As radicalization increases, you separate the person from their families, right? You separate them. You know, 2 years ago, the Surgeon General of the United States, under the Biden administration, came out with a document that said there was an epidemic of loneliness going through. And it's not quite the same in the Philippines, but this is, I think, something that you have to look at. Our young people, the people who spend more time online, are isolated. So this now, put that in the context of 1 million messages coming at you per hour, right? What does that mean? And this is how information operation works. How do they normalize lies? There are two phases: the seeding of the meta-narrative and then the opportunistic amplification. And I'm going to break this down for you in all the different phases. When you push a narrative in, right? And it could be a lie. It could be that we're in Paris. I just came from, so we're in Paris. And if I were to push that 1 million times on social media, everyone outside the room most likely will believe we're in Paris. But when you walk outside, you're in Manila, right? So the real world will always anchor you. But this is how you normalize a lie. You build the narrative, you seed it. And a good example here is, and I think this will be fascinating both for the Philippines and for Russia, the meta-narrative that was seeded in 2014 that was used to annex Crimea, right? 2014 was the same meta-narrative that was then used to actually invade Ukraine itself. Power begins in the information system, then the echo chamber reinforcement. You then amplify it for every crisis, and the malign actor amplification, and the lie becomes a fact. Let me give you a concrete example, and I'm going to use Europe because we in the Philippines hopefully will not go through this, although very interesting. We're still watching the Senate like everyone is. Our reporter is outside. We go to the UK where there was a riot, right? Because now you're seeing this in every country around the world. You're seeing the amplification of lies. What happened here was there was a mass stabbing and the disinformation came out and people believed it. People believed it because the correction of the lie doesn't spread as far, right? False claims circulated that the suspect was a Muslim asylum seeker. It's not true, but that's what people believed. So how did it work in terms of disinformation? And this is data that we gathered. This report was given to the government, but look at the data. Rohan, you're going to love the stuff that we've learned. It's all data-driven. Anti-immigrant narratives before, during, and after the Southport riot. And you can see the seeding first in your country. If you're from the West, the anti-immigrant narratives create us against them, us versus them. This is part of what it's used for, the narrative building, the echo chamber reinforcement. You can see the seeding began way before, but the opportunistic amplification allowed the violence to happen, right? This can trigger violence, the crisis exploitation and malign actor amplification. I still haven't gotten to the real thing. Can you please give me time? I mean, like, if you tell me the time, I'll stick to the time. Because now I'm going to get to the main part of why I'm speaking to you. This is a report that we rolled out at the beginning of January 20th, the 1-year anniversary of the Trump administration. We took all the data in the first 100 days of the Trump 2.0, and here's what we found. So first, you have to know that in the first 100 days of President Trump, he issued 143 executive orders. 143 in 100 days. Let me show you what happened to them. The strategic objective became very clear, right? It's not in the public information ecosystem. You don't want to win policy debates anymore. It's not about actually making an argument. This one was about fueling a conflict online that breaks down our shared reality. Let me show you how that works. 143 EOs, right? Executive orders. They didn't just happen in the physical world. USAID wasn't dismantled alone in the physical world, but every one of the executive orders was a narrative trigger, a content trigger online. And that then was amplified by a decentralized network of influencers that was then reinforced by the design of the platform itself. We know this very well in the Philippines, right? And then that continues. So in this brave new world, political legitimacy is not won through policy debate. It's hard to talk to your people. You win it because of the design of the platforms, which spreads lies faster than facts. That's as early as 2018, an MIT study said lies spread 6 times faster. That was before Elon Musk bought Twitter and turned it to X, right? So what else happened? This is the old world we lived in, the persuasion model. All democracies then had the institutional gatekeepers. We're all Pinoy, so we know. Oh my God, I have 5 minutes. All right, shared public sphere. This is the model that and this was a peer-reviewed paper, a deconstruction model where your institutional gatekeepers were pushed out. So you basically had the digital battlefield, and then you went into mobilizing the base, i.e. pushing. They aren't anchored in facts at all, but they can move. This is what we're seeing play out at the Senate, maybe, right? Aside from power and money. So this is not an accident. You have a deliberate political strategy, you have technological architecture, and you have an economic model, right? This report is on the NERV website. So this is the part that I like. A meme, one meme that came out in January 2025 became the national security strategy in December 2025. The national security strategy of the United States now basically takes what Hungary had in its constitution, white replacement theory, or if you want to call it, right, it's literally, well, you're seeing it play out. But in addition to that, it is also might makes right. It essentially put in policy that the United States can walk into any of the countries it wanted to. So this is leading to Venezuela. In less than a year, you went from a meme to the Delta Strike Force in Venezuela on January 3rd, 2026. This is what it looks like in almost every country that has social media, that has generative AI, which is now what's social media being filled with? AI slop, right? Synthetic content. So what happens up top? Narrative warfare. When you say that lie a million times, what does it do? It weakens institutions and gets rid of the checks and balances in our country, in the Philippines, during the days of Duterte. It took about 6 months to do this. In the United States in 2025 to 2026, I would posit it was 143 executive orders. I think they did it in 100 days based on the data. What's the bottom of the funnel? This is actually what we're fighting for now in the legislature in the Philippines: strategic corruption and kleptocracy, right? This is the funnel in every country that you go through around the world. This is the work that we do at the Institute of Global Politics. There's a lot of stuff there, but we mobilize public interest tech communities. We've released critical data sets. We've engaged the global scientific community. So supporting me will be our team at IGB for the UN scientific panel. We premiered frontier research. The Philippines has to get on board, right? If we don't understand the public information ecosystem, we won't be able to fight back. Oh, and for the countries that are using AI, right, you're seeing a replacement of the state institutions by companies that are owned by tech CEOs who want to take over that system, right? Again, there's so much. Let me just quickly close because I know that I'm out of time. I'm going to leave you because it's not hopeless. And the Philippines, I always joke that, that the Philippines went from hell to purgatory, and that you can literally You can survive and fight, as has South Korea. Countries, there are 19 countries around the world that lost democracy for a little bit, that had weakened their institutions, but are coming back out. Brazil, for example, is now walking into elections in October. Here, this is how we did it in the Philippines, and I'm going to quickly go through this. 3 pillars: journalism, technology, to build community. And I'm going to show you what we did, which is we organized the communities to take over facts for our 2022 elections. This was delayed partly because of the Nobel, but we rolled it out. About 150 different groups, NERV organized, and every week mapped the ecosystem. 16 news groups, the fact checks that they do don't spread as far. So we had a mesh layer. Every single member of these groups every day shares one fact check with emotion. And you can't use anger. And what we found by mapping that is that inspiration spreads as fast as anger. Let me say that again. Inspiration spreads as fast as anger. When we mapped our ecosystem, we found out that in the Philippines, there were 4 major clusters in the Facebook and in the social media world. The clusters around news, around art, activists clustered together, but this one was fascinating to me: faith. When we saw this, I began working much, much more closely with Pope Francis and the Vatican. This is the moment we took over the center of the public information ecosystem. The blue are our partners, the orange are boundary spanners, the yellow is where the information spread. And facts did take over the center of the public information ecosystem before elections. Last, technology. Technology is critically important, and frankly, every democratic country around the world abdicated responsibility for protecting us. This, I hope to see more from the EU. The problem is that now you have given control, including not protecting your citizens, including our safety, to public tech companies whose main goals, private tech companies whose main goals are profit, power, and profit, right? So what's our goal here? We want to look for a public interest tech stack, the Matrix protocol. And we in Rappler, we got so tired waiting for someone else to build it that in 2023, we built it and we rolled it out. So we are ready for elections. What does that mean? Well, the public interest tech stack is on the Matrix protocol. The Matrix protocol, Germany, France, all their government websites are on the Matrix protocol because it is decentralized, it's open source, it's end-to-end encrypted. You are protected. You're not going to be insidiously manipulated by algorithms that are pushing you, right? Today, 74% of the world is now under autocratic rule because we are electing illiberal leaders democratically. All of that you can connect to our public information ecosystem. So, sorry, back to the Philippines. We have 65 news organizations now on this. Our community news groups, we had chat rooms to strengthen local journalism, and we conducted the 2022 elections on the Matrix protocol. I'm going to leave you with this. You need to have, if you want to try it, please do. Our error rate for our chat bot is 1.63 versus the commercial error rate of 16%. If you talk to tech companies, folks, don't lean in the hallucination. Don't let them use that word. It's called error. When the machine has a 16% error rate, you do not want to use it to target people, right? This is the world we live in today. Anyway, lots to say. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria. It is hard not to listen or not to look at your presentations. It's very interesting when she said, when you say a lie 1,000,000 times, it becomes a fact. Isn't it scary in the times of social media? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are now about to introduce to you our next speaker. They say the people most committed to keeping the world safe are the ones who continue the mission no matter what happens in life. Our next speaker is exactly the kind of man that he is. A globally respected authority on terrorism, insurgency, and international security, whose work has helped governments and security institutions across the world to better understand evolving threats. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Rohan Gunaratna.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Nobel Laureate Maria Ressa made $1 million presentation. She's a daughter of Philippines, and she's immensely valued, not only in the Philippines, but globally. I had the great pleasure of working with her at the International Center for Political Violence and Terrorism Research in Singapore for a year, during which time she did groundbreaking research. I also want to share with you a secret. That is, she's the first person to tell on CNN that Abu Bakr Bashir, the leader of Jama Islamiyah, was a terrorist. Other journalists feared to say it. So we are very grateful to her for being so resilient and being so brave in the face of threats by states and also by non-state actors. I think all of us are fortunate to have a Maria Ressa. I'm going to speak to you about the Middle East. The Middle East is the heartland of the world. And whatever that happens in the Middle East will impact every country, every citizen, including the Philippines. Because it is the very heart of the world. So 1/3 of the world's oil energy supplies will move through the Straits of Hormuz and Bab el-Mandeb. Both these straits are under control by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is an administrative, military, political, and a security and intelligence entity. So Iran has the power to control the heartbeat of the world, the energy that we all need, even to speak, to meet, to travel. The US war with Iran, the Israel's war with Iran will not end. It will persist. What you have seen is only the first phase of that campaign. In the coming months and coming years, you will witness more attacks. General Brawner's presentation, he referred to the drone threat. He's my friend, so I can always share with you, it is not the drone threat. It's the threat of aerospace capabilities, which is drones, missiles, rockets, and other projectiles. So to fight this threat, which Philippines will also experience, if there is war in this region, you have to build not only the capabilities of air, land, and naval, but cyber and outer space. But you need one more capability. That is the 5th domain of warfare. That is, you have to move from the 5 domains of warfare into the sixth domain, which is called technology. So World War II was won because air, land, sea, there was coordination. Today we have outer space and we also have cyber. But we need one other domain, which is technology. That is why it is so important for all of us to understand that we are living in a new global reality. If we don't invest in that domain, and I think Philippines will, because of its partnership with the Americans and its partnership with Europe, with Australia, with other very advanced countries, you will be able to protect yourself. Let us look at China, where President Trump visited yesterday. 80% of the energy supplies from the Strait of Hormuz is for China. So you can see that economic security is as important as any other domain of security. And it is the private sector that controls, manages, and owns about 80% of that. And that is why it is so important that we all meet together, the public and the private sector. Because if we don't protect the private sector, then we will fail in the fight. In fact, the private sector will become a bigger target than the government sector. Because if the private sector industry is targeted, every country will lose the fight. And that is why Iran itself, Iran's IRGC itself said, we will target Google, we will target Palantir, and mentioned 16 companies. So I want you to know that no longer can international and global security be maintained without this crucial partnership. Going back to the Middle East, it is not only the question of energy. The rise of global terrorism started in the Middle East in 1968, and it evolved, and it came to the Philippines. In fact, Osama bin Laden, who is a Saudi citizen, sent his brother-in-law, Muhammad Jamal Khalifa. Maria Ressa knows this story very well. He lived in the Philippines. He married women from the Philippines. I interviewed him. And bin Laden's brother-in-law came here in 1988. The same year, bin Laden created Al-Qaeda. That was August 11th, 1988. And of course, Osama bin Laden's brother-in-law, he built the prototype for 9/11 called O-Plan Bujinka, which is to attack 14 airlines over the Pacific. And the plan was hatched in the Philippines. The test for that plan was a terrorist boarding a flight in Cebu, getting off in Manila, but before he got off, he planted a bomb in the plane, which he made with his Casio watch with nitroglycerin from contact lens solution and a 9-volt battery from his camera. And when the flight was going to Japan, it was going to explode, but the fuselage part of it was damaged. Japanese engineer and student was killed, but the skilled pilot landed the plane in Naha, Okinawa. So I want you to know that Philippines was a very important theater of operations. Today, the face of terrorism is being replaced by a territorial threat. But I caution all of you that the threat of terrorism has only gone to remission. Terrorism is like cancer. When you treat it, it will go to remission. But when you don't look at it, it will emerge again. Two people from Australia, Naveed and Sajid Akram, came here last year to receive training. We have a video of them going to a gun shop in Davao. So the Philippines, the southern Philippines as a theater of operations will persist in the coming years. There wasn't even a single word referring to terrorism in the presentation that was delivered by our colleague from the AFP. I thought that I must not be politically correct and inform my colleagues here from AFP, from PNP, and from NICA and the other security agencies that when ISIS emerged in the Philippines, in Marawi, 2 years before that, I spoke to General Anyo, Eduardo Anyo, who just stepped down as NSA, a brilliant man. And I also spoke to General Lorenzana, who was Secretary of Defense. We warned them about the flow of ISIS fighters, flow of ISIS money, ISIS propaganda. Philippines never took it seriously. AFP spokesman said, there's no ISIS here. But when Marawi happened, it all changed. They acknowledged it. General Lorenzana asked me to brief him. General Anyo was present. Then we decided a strategy to create something called ASEAN Allies to shape the outcome of the fight. But I think you face a threat when it comes to what is happening in China. But the more persistent threat to you is not China. It is crime and it is terrorism. Why do I say it is crime? It is because we have seen a very significant crime-terrorism nexus globally, including in the Philippines. The movement of drugs. You have to give death penalty to drug traffickers. You have to build rehabilitation centers for addicts. You also have to ensure that you fight extremism and you are not fighting ideological extremism that leads to violence, that leads to terrorism. In the south of the Philippines, as long as you have the madrasas and the mosques and the institutions that preach hatred, that create prejudice, suspicion, and resentment, it will snowball into violence and terrorism. This is a cycle. So I believe that this is the best time to work very closely with the MILF and with the other groups, with the other entities, with BAM, to give the Philippines character, which is a character of harmony, of peace, and of stability, because without social harmony, you cannot have political stability, and political stability is what is essential for economic prosperity. I conclude my presentation by saying the Middle East brought you exclusivist and extremist ideologies. The Middle East brought you energy reserves. But today, the Middle East is facing another crisis that is likely to last for many months and many years. Why is it? Because Iran thinks that it is a continental power. That is why Iran attacked 12 countries in its neighborhood. Iran doesn't think like a middle power. Iran wants to be a great power like Russia, like China, and like the United States. Iran has three capabilities that needs to be dismantled. One is its fissile or nuclear capabilities, its military nuclear program. It has sufficient uranium based on what the Omani mediators said to make 11 bombs. And that will precipitate an arms race in the Middle East, destabilize that region. Second is that Iran has a missile program where it can attack countries, not only the Gulf as it has done and continues to do intermittently, even after the ceasefire, but will be able to reach Europe, Asia, even Africa. So its missile program needs to be curbed and curtailed as long as the current regime exists. Currently, Iran's regime is not run by the religious leaders, not by the political leaders, by the military, because President Trump and Netanyahu eliminated the political and the religious leaders. Today, IRGC runs Iran. Very dangerous group of people. And third is, of course, Iran is a key sponsor of terrorism globally. And IRGC itself has a presence in the Philippines. So I want all of you to know the threat. I also want you to know that if we work together as a family between the government and the private sector, certainly we can reduce the threat. But to do this, we need to have common databases. We have to have joint training, joint operations, share resources, information, technology, and finally, the most important thing, share experience. So I thank all of you for your participation, and I ask all of you to work with your partners, even if you don't like them, to build stability and security. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rohan Gunaratna, our experts in giving warnings. May I invite Professor to please stay on stage, Maria Ressa, as well as the CEO of Leverage International, Mrs. Cecilia Sanchez, for a quick photo. And of course, Professor, thank you for opening our eyes to the upcoming threats and global tensions that we are preparing for. While they're taking a quick photo, how's everybody? Are you guys okay? Are you still with us? Photo. Okay. So let's have one quick photo, and then we'll also invite some of the ambassadors to please join us again on stage. Please join us. And of course, before we begin our first panel, may I invite everybody to please hold your glasses muna. Everybody, do you have glasses in front of you? Please hold your glasses. Hold your glasses. Everybody, di ba parang kasal lang? Hold your glasses. Cheers with the person beside you and tell them, thank you for protecting our country. Oh, tell the person behind, thank you for protecting our country. Awesome. Thank you for protecting our country. Thank you very much. And of course, thank you to Philip Morris once again for sponsoring Protect 2026, as well as our media partners and supporting organization. Maraming salamat. Oh, I will invite now our speakers and our delegates to please join us here.
Hello.
And yeah, we'll give them a few seconds, some more photo. Are we good? And ladies and gentlemen, we are about to introduce our first panel. Do we still have some energy? Do we want more? Yes, bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again. Thank you again, Maria. Thank you. Thank you, Professor, Ambassador. Thank you for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, this is it. About to hear our first panel discussion. All right, to begin our first panel discussion on territorial disputes, geopolitical tensions, global volatility, the Middle East crisis, and business positioning. Oh, you'd love this session. We'd love to call on the moderator of this session. It is my honor to introduce a woman who has been part of Leverage International for over a decade. Would you believe it? She has been helping us. Can we turn down the music a little bit? Thank you. This woman has been helping us to organize international events and building meaningful connections across Southeast Asia and beyond. She flew all the way lang naman from Austin, Texas, USA to be with us and to moderate the first session. Personally, ladies and gents, she is also a woman who I deeply, deeply, deeply admire. And in many ways, whose shoes I am honored to help fill today. A woman of grace, class, and global experience. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Miss Adelaida Morelos-Chan.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, good morning. Thank you for being with us today at a time of great uncertainty and challenges, as we all know and lived through last night's news. Today, we would like to welcome a panel of 4 experts who look at the world from very different but deeply connected angles. They will address the major external threats affecting business today. And since these 4 thinkers and speakers will provide their expertise that address the critical issues governing today's governance, global stability, economic strategy, and national development. Their combined perspectives will analyze ongoing territorial disputes that impact the global volatility of how the Middle East crisis is impacting everything from international relations, market economics, financial strategy, and infrastructure policy planning. So we have a guarantee that we will have an exciting hour ahead. But before that, these experts will speak of their multidimensional perspectives, and as valuable as that is, we are looking forward to the exchange that will follow, for surely this will enrich our discussion and deepen our understanding of today's most pressing issues. It is in this exchange and synergy that Protect delivers unusual solutions. And at the end of this, we invite you, the audience, to join us in the dialogue with your insights and questions. So today we are fortunate to have all the way from the United Kingdom, where it's now close to 2 a.m. in the morning, Dr. Jorge Nunez, who has a reputation well established in international relations. He will offer us his deep insights into geopolitical strategy, diplomacy, and the evolving global order. So we are most very grateful to Dr. Nunez for his commitment to contribute to our panel at 2 a.m. in the morning. Dr. Nunez will come now.
Thank you very much, Anadela.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vanessa, and greetings
Before
from
that,
the UK.
may I invite all the panelists, Mr. Ravelas, and Mr. Bilbier to come on stage. And may I also invite Mr. George Barcelon. Will you join us on stage, please? All right, Dr. Nunez, it's yours.
Hello, can you hear me?
No sound.
Hello? Hello? Is it working?
Yes, I'm sorry. We're not hearing Dr. Nunez at all.
Hello?
Okay. Dr. Nunez is
Hello?
originally from Argentina, where he took
Correct.
up his law degree, but he is well known globally and is considered an expert in his field. Any
Hello?
sound?
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Well, as we await Dr. Nunez to come online, maybe Dr. Barcelon, would you like to start today's?
Thank you very much, Madam Chan. Happy to be here. I represent the private sector. I'm the Chairman Emeritus of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and
Hello?
Industries. In the past
Hello?
years, I've been
Hello?
involved in
Hello? Is it working?
also the one private sector representative of ASEAN.
Hello?
I actually
Hello?
Hello.
Hello? Is it working? Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Si ano ba? Nagsasalita na si Baxel eh. Hindi, okay lang.
As I was saying, I was responsible for the ASEAN 2026 Leader Summit, the leaders of the ASEAN.
Wait.
And just like
Ano sabi
share
ko,
with
wait
you
muna.
the
Thank you very much.
It's ready, okay.
Yes, we'll get back,
yes, yeah.
sorry, in
Yeah, it's all right.
Thank
No
you
problem.
very much, we
No problem.
apologize. All right, we're now going to have our guests on Zoom.
Ayan na, okay na. Cheers.
Welcome, sir.
Hello, okay na.
Sir Nunez, feel free to speak. We can unmute
Perfect.
you.
Yes, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you very much. I cannot see you. I can only see a black screen here. Well, thank you very much, Annabella, for such a nice presentation, and Vanessa as well for hosting. And thank you all, guests here for the invitation. It's 3 in the morning here in the UK.
Ano yun na yun?
So my plan, I'm going to refer, first of all, I prepare a short presentation, 5 minutes, to be mindful with the other speakers. But before I share my presentation with you, just a few highlights. From the Danish ambassador, I have to completely agree. The Philippines are right now the Southeast Asia defense boundary. And as well, the Philippines is especially risky in its situation. Why? We need to address one issue. We are not talking anymore about only states. We need to start embracing non-state actors. And right now, public international law is left behind. So I have to completely agree with His Majesty. Second, Maria Ressa, she mentioned fact, truth, and trust. Completely agree with her. The only disagreement here, she was talking about a geopolitical power game. That's not enough, I have to argue, Maria. We need to talk about the multidimensional game. Why? Because it's not only geopolitics. We need to include law, culture, finance, and many others, as I will explain in my presentation. And finally, Rohan, very interesting presentation. And I can only agree with you, and I've been saying that for many, many, many years. The Iran, Israel, USA situation, we are only seeing the very first stage. And I have to, again, corroborate your explanation. Things will get harder. So without any further thing to do, I'm going to now share my presentation with you to explain myself even better.
Thank you, Mr. Nunez. We will
Yes,
now
wait,
hear
wait,
I'm
wait
going
lang.
to talk
Wait
about
lang.
sovereignty as risk management. I will explain how to navigate these contextual realities in territorial discourse. My details here, if you want to contact me, and the roadmap today. I will explain what is at stake, my thesis, my main message, the context in my work, and I'll make two main points. Finally, I will refer to my vision, I will refer to a call of action, and my consultancy and coaching services. What is at stake? Territorial disputes from the West Philippines Sea to the Middle East, including Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Palestine, include structural risks. This has to do with, for example, shipping route disrupted, investments frozen. This hits supply chains, physical assets, and even investor confidence. Lawyers, political science ask singular questions. Who has the legal, political right? This is not the main issue, and that's why these are more complicated than they should be. The smarter question I propose, how do we operate profitably when sovereignty itself is fluid? My work spans for 20 years, and I've dealt with cases in the Americas, Europe, Asia, Africa, Middle East, and so on. My key message, my key thesis, sovereignty today must be understood as a risk management tool. This is not a static line on a map. This is old-fashioned. The ongoing capacity to maintain operational autonomy amidst structural volatility is what sovereignty is right now. Once again, example of my work, what I propose, rather than thinking as a lawyer, thinking as a political scientist, thinking as a military man or a businessman, etc. Those are what I call unidimensional view. What I've been proposing for many, many years has to do with a multidimensional view that embraces all. Because these issues are complex, if we want to maximize gain, we need to address that complexity. That brings me to my first point. From only legal issues, we need to focus on dynamic fluidity. International law is indeed important. International politics are important, but these are not enough. We need to shield ourselves. That is why we need to embrace that sovereignty is fluid and plural. It implies multiple agents, such as companies, corporations, states, people, communities, different contexts, not just the international, the domestic, the regional, law, factual issues, and so forth. These are hybrid issues that need hybrid solutions. Military, regulation, reputation, operations. That is why, and skimming through, there are many elements, including people, community, state, playing different roles in different contexts, different issues as well pertaining realities, and different elements and features. That is why single approaches, only legal, only political, only scientific, only military, are not enough, and they are failing to address these issues, and they are bringing problems to businesses. This is the traditional view of a territorial dispute, not enough nowadays. These are much more complex, as this chart simply explains. That brings me to my main point and recommendations. We need to build up practical resilience, how to move the pieces. Territorial disputes are not checkers. This is a chess game. We need to conduct a multidimensional risk assessment that go beyond just the legal title, but include political issues, economic issues, cultural issues, and so forth. We need to build operational redundancy and diversified positioning rather than single point answer. That is why, translated to you, it has to do with engaging proactively with both governments and partners to build up a joint scenario planning. We need to work on proactive strategic resilience. Sovereign disputes, territorial disputes are an opportunity that brings structural market risk, but as well brings new ways to do things. That is why, in order to address this complexity, we need multidimensional strategy that determines how to more profitable operate in this context. Different dimensions and variables can help the risk management issues. That is why my vision has to do with imagining your businesses that not simply avoid chaos, because we need to go through these zones, but we need to know how exactly operate turning potential vulnerability into calculated resilient advantages. This is possible when we reframe sovereignty as a dynamic risk management tool. That is why this opportunity, the Protect 2026 conference, has to do with a multidimensional mindset shift we must conclude. In order to do that, policymakers and business leaders here today, we need to integrate geopolitical foresight into strategies. We need to collaborate across sector and build resilience by not wishing away uncertainty. We need to embrace it. We need to learn to master it. And that's why I'm here. As an example, I'm going to offer a 2 days intensive workshop in Athens in July. If you are interested, please feel free to contact me. And you need a tailored assessment, a tailored risk management portfolio, a tailored coaching session or sessions, please feel free to contact me. Thank you very much. Maraming salam.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nunez.
And now pass the mic to Dr. George Barcelona.
I'll start from where I left off earlier. I was saying that I just returned from Cebu, attending the ASEAN 2026. I'm sure you know that the Philippines is hosting this year's event. For the meeting in Cebu, this is the Leader Summit. So we have 10 leaders from ASEAN, except Myanmar. They just sent a representative. Just to give you a brief key topics that were discussed by the leaders. First and foremost, primarily, is fertilizer. It's a fuel. You know very well what happened Strait of Hormuz. The supply chain has been disrupted. And definitely everybody is feeling the pain of not getting their usual allocation of fuel. And secondly, we also discussed, or the president discussed with the other leaders regarding fertilizer. Okay. Fertilizer, of course, is one of the products that the petrochemical produces, and that this is also effective. And the other concern among the ASEAN leaders, the safety of the citizens. We do have a lot of Filipinos working in the Middle East and other ASEAN countries. They have their respective citizens working there. So the peace with their concern for their well-being is considered. One of the side issues that was discussed, since we're talking about geopolitics, is I'm sure lately you've heard about the skirmish between Thailand and Cambodia. And it hasn't been really resolved, but our President BBM, took the initiative of getting the two countries leaders together and sort of had a token friendship shake hand. But it doesn't resolve the issue at hand between the two countries. Now having the concern that earlier that was presented by the previous speakers about geopolitics. Yes, we are faced with geopolitics, external, but those are beyond our control. We just have to be able to navigate under this situation. But really, what is of concern to us is we have to make certain that we get our fuel that's necessary for the industry and for logistics. We're happy that we have now a new source. We were able to import from Russia. I believe they send a boatload of fuel for us. And also, Indonesia has also supported us in giving us fuel, but most importantly, coal. Our baseload power generation is based on coal. So we import about 80 to 90% of our coal from Indonesia. And because what has happened, the supplies has been curtailed, and also the price has gone up. But I believe to our common ASEAN brotherhood, Indonesia has assured us that coal, we will still continuously get the coal from them, and at prices where it's reasonable. So these are the things that we're facing, the challenges. And the other really challenge that we have to on the local scene is the weather. we're going to face an extreme El Nino, shortage of rain. And that would affect us badly. We import around 4.6 metric ton of rice, mainly from Vietnam and also Thailand. Okay. There has been some article that wrote about due to the fertilizer shortage, they may not produce, or their harvest may not be as much as what they had last year. And definitely that could cause a supply issue and also a price increase. If you remember 2023 and 2024, we had experienced also El Nino. And one of the issue that had our inflation went up to about 5% at that time was because of rice. As of late, the inflation report for us is 7.2%, mainly driven by fuel costs and also food related. But for the poor, those at the bottom of the totem pole, the inflation that they experience is more like 8.5%. Okay. So those are real concern as a country, and also for the legislature, how they can navigate in this critical period. With what I've just shared with you, it's very important for us, for the government, to be able to go out and work with countries that before we do not work so closely. We have to learn like Singapore. Singapore is one country that I admire because they are able to navigate with different political countries. And it's very important for us because at this point in time, with all the troubles that the world is facing, and as mentioned, that one of the areas that we have really concerned is terrorism. So it's important for a country, for a small country like the Philippines. We are, population-wise, we are 115 million. Average age of 25, which is very good, demographic sweet spot. So we have to be smart. Our government has to be smart to be able to work, to navigate, that we should not put ourselves in the crosshair when the big boys are fighting. So let me end with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. We will now have Mr. Jonathan Ravelas, a market economist and financial strategy advisor. He has been known to analyze and help organizations navigate economic trends, investment decisions, and long-term planning. So can we hear from Mr. Ravelas?
Good morning, everyone. So I think one of the most important that taking cue from Maria Ressa is the self-perpetuating feedback loop. So it talks about a lot of triggers. So basically, the oil dilemma that let me just focus on the Philippines is actually one of the more important triggers. So the oil dilemma that affects three sectors: transport, food, and utilities, which is power. And this is, I think, a very big problem for the Philippines. And of course, that will continue to more or less expand, mainly because of this issue on oil. And if it continues. So the challenge now is how to mitigate all of this. Earlier, Mr. Barcelona talked about what potential steps, but let me try to give you a more concrete overview that highlights this whole story. And I think to probably give us a very good perspective of the environment today, let's draw the chorus from the Greek play Antigone. Not only do men move about an uncharted landscape, the landscape in itself is in constant motion, and men be quick enough to move about it. Where they earn it, they go through the cracks that open under the feet. So the key here actually is it's all about speed, not perfection. The key thing that we need to do, especially for the Philippines, is to act fast. And this is a challenge for the government. And whether we talk about this geopolitical risk, we talk about the effects on the Philippine economy, and mind you, this is just roughly 10 weeks into the war. We've already seen a series of unfortunate events. What are those events? We used to be the first or the second fastest growing economy in the region. Today, we're the slowest at 2.8% in the first quarter, barring the announcement of Thailand, they're going to grow by 2.5%. The second, we have a record inflation of 7.2%. At the same time, our debt to GDP is at around 63 to 64%. And these are alarming. Our gross international reserves in February was 113 billion. We're now around $104 billion. So this is something to be worried about. And Professor Rohan, and I think this is something that he mentioned, it's very important because one of the problems as this all compound is BLT, breakfast, lunch, dinner for Filipinos. And if that goes unchecked, that will be a problem of our military because that could trigger the rise of terrorism again, the Philippines. And we've seen this, especially after President Estrada with Marawi, and then the other one during the time of President Duterte. Okay, so I think the key challenge that we need to be able to do is how to address these strategic risks, especially at a point when we all talk about the Strait of Hormuz, sure, but that's over $2 trillion worth of trade. Straits of Malacca are between 3 to 4 trillion. The West Philippine Sea or the South China Sea is having trades between 3 to 5 trillion dollars. Those are important trade areas and points where the Philippines should be, that we are strategically located. So, sure, we talk about how negative things are. Let's look at it from a positive perspective. COVID brought us, the Philippines, from a sort of cash basis, we're now digital. People are less cash within themselves, they just use their phone. That was a forced upgrade. Today, it's a forced upgrade for the Philippines, not just on energy, but even on food security. So to all the embassies that are here, this is your opportunity to further strengthen our bond because this is something that's so important.
Thank you, Mr. Reveles. I now will call on Professor Romeo, who is a specialist in infrastructure policy and planning. His work focuses on sustainable development, national planning, and the systems that support economic and social resilience. Professor.
Good morning, everyone. Given 5 minutes, I will not be dwelling so much about all the political risks and the negative stories, but I will summarize my priorities and comment in one phrase, in relation to what. So we're talking about geopolitical risk, potential damage to our economy, but let me say at least 3 things. First, the Philippine economy has been okay for the last 17 years, growing at an average of 5% per year over the last 7 years, with or without a good president, with or without a foreign source or international presence. Everybody predicted that the Philippine economy will grow by -10 during the global recession, but we grew by 1%, and then immediately growing at around 7 to 8% the following year, the fastest in the 40 years from 2010 moving upwards. So we have one of the most resilient economies in the world. Why? Because of 3 things. When I teach economics, so to my students, I only point them to 3 things. You need a lot of people, a lot of money, and a lot of emotions for you to have a growing. So, without the thousands of slides that I have, let us review. Do we have a lot of people? Yes. In fact, it has become our #1 export material. People, we are actually exporting around 3,000 to 6,000 Filipinos every day. So one barangay here, the Philippines is around 5,000. So we are exporting a village per day, and we still not running out of people. So we have a lot of people, and that's why we point to the next point is money. We have the largest net additional income from abroad as a percentage of GDP in the world. So the only countries that can beat us are countries that I actually do not know where to locate them. So, or this Kuwait, because they have sovereign fund that actually invest in other countries, and therefore when they receive those returns on investments, then they have positive and additional income from abroad. But us, we have our oil companies. And lo and behold, so never in the history of the GDP of the Philippines that we were actually affected by an oil crisis. In the 70s oil crisis, our economy actually performed 1 year, it was 7%, and another year it was 9%. So our economy, as a total, so don't get me wrong, as a total, has never experienced a negative GDP growth because of an oil crisis. Why? Because we are more vulnerable for what my idol Jonathan said, dollar reserves. So our period of negative GDP growth, which was in the beginning of 1980s, was because we ran out of dollar reserves. We had negative 4.5 months of dollar reserves. And when that happens to a small open economy, usually a person that is important is shot or the president is impeached. And that's what happened to Sri Lanka during the COVID-19. So, what's the state of our dollar reserve? You'll be surprised to know the Philippines has one of the largest dollar reserves in the world in terms of months of import cover. So we are hovering between 7 to 10 months of import cover. China is roughly around 15 to 18, together with the mix of Saudi Arabia. Well, America has 1.5 months of import cover. But it's not a problem because they can always split their own dollars. But us, we have to earn it. And the data shows from January, February, and March, we have actually received at least plus 3%. 3% increase in OFW remittances. So that is very important so that we can always absorb the increase in oil prices. So that is that part. So we have a lot of people, a lot of money. We have a lot of emotions. As of the first quarter report of the BSP, our consumer expectation survey of consumer optimism has now become actually less pessimistic. So I don't know, because that's we only experienced oil crisis towards the last part of the first quarter. So we will have to really look at the data of the second quarter, whether the pessimism will return to a worse level. But as of now, we are now less pessimistic about that. Well, perhaps because of last night, so perhaps you are 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours of sleep. Perhaps because of last night, Filipinos are more emotional. So, and that I hope will spur spending. So, because we really badly need spending. Why? Because the government has not been spending for the last 4 quarters. So, I always tell my clients, the infrastructure crisis is a bigger threat and risk and crisis to our economy than the oil crisis and geopolitics. Why? Because you have the construction as the mother of all industries, and government construction is the leader of the 4 trillion peso construction sector that drives the 28 trillion GDP of the Philippines. And for the last 4 quarters, it has been a negative infrastructure growth. And in the first quarter of this year, it was negative 32, coming from negative 42 from fourth quarter. So if we're talking about a 2.8% GDP growth, that is so dismal. It was actually unimaginable. The 2.8% was unimaginable. If you're talking about 5% average for the last 7 years. I've been telling my friends, it's easy to be an economist in the Philippines because it will always be 5% over the next 7 years. Because 76% of our economy is Filipino families, and they will just spend and spend and spend as long as they're emotional, and we will have 5%. But it will take a different turn when we have 4 quarters of double-digit negative growth in infrastructure. That led to 2.3% is unimaginable and unpredictable from that point of view. Anyway, so we have people with emotions. You know, we have 2 worlds. We have 15% of our population, 17 million of our Filipinos live by choose between the 3, the breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You will just choose because we have 21 pesos per person per meal. That budget of the poor, which are 17.5 million of them. That is the bad news. The good news is that 170 million minus 17 million is 100 million. So it is very hard to grasp the idea that the Philippines has 100 million Filipinos that are not poor. And therefore, I go to this opportunity. The greatest source of our economic security that we need to national security of the Philippines is to really rally the 100 million people. The foreigners, foreign governments, foreign businesses are supposed to take a look at this particular data. Please, partner with the Philippines, not just with the Philippine government, with Philippine businesses. Our former president, PCCI, Dr. George Percelot, is here. The private sector is 85% of our Philippine economy. The government is only 15%. All they need to do is to spend the money that they collected from us. They could not spend it. That is basic economics. C plus I plus G. So that I and the G must rally behind the C, which is 76%. So we thank the PCCI for making sure that the 85% is safe. And lo and behold, in the middle of that slowdown in 2025, we had a phenomenal export growth. We could not even predict that. We could not actually predict that the export has actually grown so much last year, 2020. So there's so much that is happening in the Philippine economy. And don't get me wrong, the Philippine government has done so many phenomenal laws. Amendment to the Public Service Act, trade liberalization, Internet Transactions Act, the new PPP code, the new government procurement. There are so many, the mining fiscal regime. So there are so many laws that can actually provide so much business opportunities that will also help, that will also serve as a dual use businesses and investment. So may I just cite 3 and then we can discuss later on during the Q&A. There are 3 things that we can actually pursue together in terms of economic and business investments that will serve both security, national security, and economic security. Number 1 is mining, or shall we call it critical minerals. So Philippines is the 5th most mineralized country in the world. We are the 2nd producer of nickel in the world. So without nickel, there's no digital economy to talk about. There's no renewable businesses to talk about. So please, also, I'm very happy that the emphasis is here. So they are all now pushing more governance, more investments for the mining sector, gold, nickel, copper, cobalt. Second, so we're talking about transport and logistics. So this is both important for business and also for our security. So for against the terrorism, against crimes, etc. Because you need to have this transport and logistics infrastructure, including the warehouses, etc. And then lastly, I point to you that we have 10 million backlog in housing. We have 170 million and people and we have backlog of 10 million and it's growing by a tune of 400,000 housing units per year. And we have only built what 150 to 200,000 housing units additional over the last year. So with the technology of foreigners combined with technology happening in the Philippines, perhaps we can provide more houses or more families, put the renewable, the solar panel, the roof, and put the internet. Then you will have the access, the democratized information, source of information that when I don't know Ressa was talking about. Let us equip our housing with proper housing and proper source of information. And that will now greatly push this thing called internet economy that Google invented. Internet economy. Did you know the Philippines is the fastest retail e-commerce in the world? And we have not even built 10 million houses for our people. Imagine if our Filipinos all have houses, all have fast internet, what can happen to our internet economy? And what can happen to our national security when we have all these investments through the help of the foreigners or businesses partnering with our Philippine businesses? With that, I end my talk.
Oh,
Okay na
round
dito.
of applause. This morning, we have lived through a lot of drama. We've had fear, we've had anger, but now we've had joy. Thank you, Professor, for the good news. Unfortunately, and Dr. Nunez, I hope you're on board. We have run out of time. Everybody was so interesting, we couldn't cut you off. But here is what we are left with. Do you want to eat lunch or do we listen to the speakers? It is a tough choice, right? So we will, with your agreement, cut down our hour and a half of lunch to perhaps 45 minutes. Is that okay? Shall we listen to more speeches then? Okay. I think the panel, we will suspend, but we would like to hear from the audience. What questions do you have? Or what suggestions and solutions do you volunteer at this point?
Anong gitna? Oo, gitna.
I just like to add, so that in perspective of our country's financial situation. True, we have breached our debt is like 63%, 64% of our GDP, right? But really, what is of concern is our debt. We now have 18 trillion. And not really negative about it. But it's a concern because we have two key government agencies that's really the backbone of the revenue side. One is the BIR. Okay. We have a new commissioner, Commissioner Mendoza. I was able to talk to him. And as of late, the collection is not too bad. They collect about 3.2 trillion pesos a year. And the other government agency is Bureau of Customs. I know for businessmen, sometimes DOC can be a pain in the neck. They collect about 1.3 trillion, 1.5. Our General Appropriation Act of the government is 6.7 trillion. So the collection from these two agencies covers more like 60% or more. Now, what is the concern is our debt servicing. We spent 2 trillion in debt servicing, 1 trillion for interest, 1 trillion for some payment of loan. So that's already 1/3 of our GAA. So government has very little leeway to spend. You know, one of the reasons why there was a GDP drop about a year ago was government curtailed their spending on infrastructure. Of course, we know a lot of money were not exactly spent on what was supposed to be. So this is a concern from the private sector. Okay. that we have seen interest has gone up. You've seen our credit standing has been compromised. In other words, if we're going to borrow again, the interest rate will be higher. So this is the message I've been sharing with government cabinet secretaries, that the shortage of funds, what was lost, is not the fault of the private sector. So in wanting to collect more money, don't look at us. We're having a difficult time. Okay? We're all out to attract foreign direct investments. I have been with the previous administration, President Duterte, probably 10, 12 times. With President BBM, I've traveled with him about 8 times. And we're always out to promote the country for more foreign direct investments. But sad to say, we're still in the lower part of the curve. The other countries have been more attractive in a way. Singapore has usually ranks about $100 billion of foreign direct investments. Second now, the highest is Vietnam. They're probably the 25. Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, they're all double figures, high double figures, 19, 20. We, as of late, our foreign direct investment, Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong, it's just bordering about 9. So that being said, we really have to work hard. Government and private sector must be in the same boat. I've talked to big businesses, whatever, and we do have concern on how we project ourselves. The cost of power is an issue. We're one of the highest. We're like 14 pesos per kilowatt hour. It used to be Singapore, but as of late, we're the highest among the other Asian countries. And the logistic cost for us, the study of the World Bank, the logistic cost in the Philippines is about 21 to 20% of products input, that logistic cost. Because what? It starts from customs. That's already one of the key issues, the delay and all the charges. And we do not have enough roads. And those are things that we have to, the government has been trying very hard, and I think we have a good Secretary of Transportation, but we still have to focus on those areas. Yes, we have a big population, but we also have a big unemployment. Our underemployment is double digits. Underemployment is about 16%. The economist, Jonathan, I think is in a better position. Our unemployment is hovering about 4%. But 5%, right? But what is of concern is the young, those graduating from K-12, those graduating from college. Every year we add warm bodies of about at least almost 2 million. And finding a job is very challenging. So I've been telling the government to PBEC, Philippine Business for Education, of which I'm also a member. And we got to look at areas where it doesn't necessarily have to be high tech. When I hear people talking about AI, IT stuff, that's fine. I would rather focus on agriculture, okay, even the low tech, such as garments. Just for your information, we have about 4 million men in uniform. All their uniforms are imported. None of them are produced locally because we lost our textile mill 30 years ago or 40 years ago. Why? Our cost of electricity was too high. Labor issue, industrial peace was also a concern. So we lost all of it. So it's hard to get that momentum going. Okay? When you see other ASEAN countries moving up. As what was said by Professor Ronilo, we have a lot of upside, but we have a lot of challenge. The other ASEAN countries are not standing still, waiting for us to catch up. They're moving ahead, way ahead. Even Cambodia. One of the sectors that we've been pushing, mineral, okay, mining definitely is one. Okay. Agri is one. The other one is tourism. How we compare on tourism, I think we're far off, right?
Yeah, we're far, but I think the most important part is that the peso will likely weaken further around 65. So it's like a 3-day sale at any mall like SM. So for you guys, the emphasis, you can go back to your country where consumption growth is over 5%. I'm sure in your country, your consumption is so low, less than 5%. Or less than 2%. So most likely, you'd better look at IKEA in Mall of Asia. It's a lot of people look at the housing backlog, everybody wants a house, right? So this is where you should put, and don't go to PESA zones. Because when you're in the PESA zone, you get to export 70%. While if you put up outside the PESA zone, you eventually take advantage of the consumption that Professor Ronnie was mentioning earlier. We're growing 5%. That's your story. We're like, let me put it this way. The Philippines is valued like a fried chicken, which is around 350 pesos. While the actual value of the Philippines, and talking about the potential for opportunity, is like a pegging duck, which is around 2,500. So imagine the value that you pump in today, invest in the Philippines, and you'll get a growth rate of over 5%. It's just that we're a diamond in the rough.
Thank you. Thank you.
That is only,
Okay.
our remittance for OFW is roughly between 38 to 40 billion dollars.
$36 billion.
That equates to around figure of 2 trillion. Right? We are a consumption economy. So the economy is growing because of money. A big part of it is through remittances. Okay. I'm all for people investing in the Philippines, in the industry. But again, I was sharing my thoughts for the power, high cost of logistics. But tourism should be an attractive one. Because it's a low-hanging fruits.
Yes, right now, typical foreigners tend to spend around $300 to $500 a day. But that's still an under potential because that only generates one job per tourist. Unlike in Thailand, they spend over 500, but eventually between 6 to 8 people get jobs. That's the problem. What we need to do as part of business is to help the tourism sector, that for every tourist, and people in this room, you can try it out. If you can do 5 things in the Philippines or in a certain area where you are now, then you're eventually helping the Philippines.
Yes, I am so sorry to interrupt. I think we're out of time. And Dr. Nunez, are we there? Do you want to say goodbye to us?
Anabela, yes, very quickly. I think I agree. I think you are doing a micro-analysis. I'm going to bring the global. The problem with the Philippines, in a very modest way, I'm going to say, is a disjointed message between government-led and private-led investment. And that comes across in the world. For instance, you mentioned Asia. China is doing that in Latin America. Government-led and private-led investment is drawn together as a joint approach. And Philippines right now is having one or the other. The best example I can put is the Petron issue, when they used to own 40% of the company and they decided to sell. They could have manipulated the price of the oil, whether to an extent or not, but now they don't have control. So that disjointed message comes across. So the lesson to be learned, cooperation here. We need to, my recommendation would be the geographical expansion. Don't think about Europe, don't think about the Middle East, think about Southeast Asia. You should be embracing the region. That's my recommendation to Latin America. Cases about the Falklands, the border between Mexico and America. We need to start working in blocks because on our own we cannot. So yes, we may work with Europe, we may work with the Middle East, but countries like the Philippines should strengthen regional cooperation. Secondly, we need to diversify capital, services, and minimize single suppliers. So once again, it has to do with cooperation and going beyond, to bring that synergy between government and private-led institutions.
Many thanks, Dr. Nunez, and to our panelists. A round of applause, please.
Thank you very much. That was panel 1, gentlemen. To our moderator, thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, our next moderator for panel 2. My gosh, so many things to say, so